The bolt slid home with a final metallic clunk that sealed the room in a temporary silence, while each impact of violent knocking vibrated through the polished wood, but I didn't hurry. I took a slow, measured breath as the scent of old leather and my own expensive cologne filled my lungs. My fingers found the cold brass of the lock, forcing a click with a twist. The door swung inward, and there stood the security head, Clint. Our eyes locked. His eyes were wide, a little wild from the chase. Mine, I knew, was the flat, calm grey of a winter sea before a storm. For a single, suspended second, the only sound was our shared breath in the doorway. She just left, I muttered to Clint as the ghost of a smile touched my lips. Clint's head snapped towards the men crowding the space behind him, atop shadows dancing in the poor light. "She's not here," he barked. "Don't let that bitch escape if you all want to stay alive. Go, go, go!" A stampede of hurried footsteps, a jangle of equipment, and then they were gone, as the noises continued to fade. Clint turned back, stepped fully inside, and closed the door, shutting us in, immediately shifting his posture from that of an aggressive hunter, replaced by a soldier at attention. "Sorry, boss." He smoothened over the gravel in his voice with respect and gave a short, sharp bow of his head. "Didn't realize you were in here." My hands were folded behind my back, and slowly I raised my right hand, flicking my index finger in a casual, almost bored gesture. "Hey, Clint," I muttered. "Yeah, boss?" He said, "Help me smash some stuff." I added, and soon a slow smirk spread across his scarred face as he crept one eyebrow upward. "You sure, boss?" He focused his gaze on me as dark amusement began to glitter in his eyes. "I won't hold back." Clint gestured, whiting his fists midair. "The more realistic it sounds, the better," I said, then turned by, grabbed a chair beside the empty bunk, and with a grunt of effort I swung it sideways. It screamed through the air before exploding against the wall, forming a gunshot sound of splintering wood. A leg ricocheted off a side table, sending a ceramic vase spinning to the floor in a shower of porcelain shards. Clint reached for an old and rusty heavy glass bulb, yanked the cord from the wall, and with a practiced motion hurled it down onto the cold marble floor. The crash was spectacular, as 1,000 crystalline teeth skittered across the stone, catching the dim light. I widened my palm, forming the universal sign for him to stop. The sudden silence that fell was deafening, ringing with the aftermath of our violence. I could smell the ozone from the broken wiring and the faint, dusty scent of shattered porcelain. Slowly, I walked to the window I had bolted shut just minutes before. I didn't look out. I just listened. And there it was, the soft, shaky scuff of a naked step on the gravel path below, hurriedly moving away. "Hey, Clint." I let the faint smile return, this time letting it linger. "Boss?" He arranged his posture once more. "I expect I scuffed, or rather, the ex-husband's family will blame me for this mess." I continued, finally turning from the window with a fluid movement as I walked towards him. "So I'll have your work doubled up after they put me behind bars." "Sue, what would you have me do, boss?" He gently rubbed the thin, raised scar that cut through his eyebrow, an old habit of his when he was thinking. "Not much." I stopped just a few feet from him. "Just make sure the main gate is opened when she's about to ride past." I added, and the air between us became thick with the unspoken. "You want me to let her escape?" His eyes narrowed a fraction. "Of course." The words came out soft, "but don't do anything after that. Your men and her furious ex-husband will be right on her tail. You can just let them chase her." "As you wish, boss." A slow understanding dawned on his face after he let out a single sharp nod. "Now go." I took a deep breath, tasting dust from the air. He left without another word, closing the door softly behind him, leaving me alone in the wreckage of my own design, and I stood there for a few minutes, just breathing in the silence. Finally I walked out, crunching my shoes on a piece of glass near the door, and headed right out the main entrance to where my car was parked. I was about to open the driver's door when I felt it. A shift in the atmosphere and the soft, deliberate crunch of gravel underfoot. Not one set of footsteps. Not two. 3. I turned around, loosening my body as a fresh, cold wave of adrenaline washed through me. The car door clicked shut behind me, forming a soft, final sound in the tense night air, and I took 2 deliberate steps forward, crunching the gravel under my shoes as the trio stood before me. "Sire Daval." I halted. The old geezer, who was just this close to becoming Ria's father-in-law, slammed his golden walking stick down on the cobblestones, forcing an unnaturally loud crack meant to intimidate. His gnarled hand, speckled with age, tightened around the stick, while the other clutched at the well-trimmed grey beard on his chin, a nervous habit he probably thought looked regal. "I asked for your help in solving a problem," he seethed through a rumbling voice, "and all you did was multiply the problems." He stepped forward, and the two men in black flanking him mirrored the movement. The air grew thick, smelling of cold night, expensive cologne, and the faint metallic scent of impending violence. "I'll ask you this just once, Mr. Mateo." The old man dragged the words out, letting each one hang in the air. "Who sent you?" I let a slow, easy smile touch my lips, planting both hands deep into my trouser pockets. "Sire," I tilted my head, "you came to me." "I see you're not in the mood to speak." A vein throbbed in his temple. "Grab him." He shut his eyes for a moment, then turned his head slightly. The bigger of the two uniforms moved, and the way he walked towards me... Damn, he was a mountain of a man, all coiled aggression and bad intentions, and obviously itching for a fight as he popped the knuckles of one massive hand, then the other. He rolled his shoulders and stretched his long, giraffe-like neck, forcing out audible pops from his bones. Honestly, all of these, they really don't scare me one bit. I took a deep, steadying breath, forcing the growing tension out of my shoulders, and forced that placid smile back onto my face. I stretched both my hands out in front of me, bringing both wrists together, and leaned them forward as he closed the final steps. The cold, hard bite of the steel cuffs snapped around my wrists, and the big officer gave them an extra vicious twist that dug the metal into my skin. Then he walked backwards, yanking on the chain link, and shoved me forward with a grunt that carried the force of his entire body. "Move it, pipsqueak!" His broody, deep voice, laced with contempt, cut through the air. The old man Jesus stepped right in front, trying to force me to meet his eyes, to drink in his triumph. But I ignored him. Completely. My gaze slid past his furious, wrinkled face and landed on the other officer. This one looked different. Leaner, quieter, with eyes that watched everything while saying nothing. He looked like a man who knew what he was doing in life. "He could be useful," I muttered to myself under a smirk. "Excuse me, Mr. Officer?" My polite, almost conversational tone was a slap in the face to Duval. I saw his jaw clench so hard I thought I could hear his teeth grind, but I couldn't care less. The leaner officer looked at me, with a flicker of surprise in his professional mask. "What exactly is my offence?" I continued, calming my voice. "I at least have the right to know, don't I?" "You forced my daughter-in-law into filing for a divorce with my son," Duval cut in, dripping the words with venom. "How are you so sure it was my doing?" I turned slowly, finally giving him my eyes, and I let my smile turn into something colder. The old man's question hung in the air, and I could feel the weight of the big guy's gaze on me. Duval's face was a mask of theatrical anguish, but his eyes were sharp with a cold, calculating fury. "She's always hanging around you after our meetings. Every single time you come here, she's always with you." His voice began to climb, losing its polished sheen and cracking with a performative rage. "How could you be so shameless as to be spending so much time with another man's fiancée?" He took a step closer, forcing the scent of his expensive sandalwood cologne to cloy on me. Crack! He slammed the walking stick down on the cobblestones again to startle me. It didn't. "How do you explain all of this? Apart from the obvious fact that now she's in love with you? How else would you explain her sudden decision to file for a divorce?" "Huh, Mateo?" He gestured wildly towards the large house, towards the imagined scandal. My eyes went wide for a moment, and a low, dry laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. I pressed my eyelids shut, dangling my head as if in disbelief, but really it was to hide the sheer contempt in my eyes. The absurdity of it was almost beautiful. "What is so funny?" Duval's breath hitched. His eyes went wide, and the whites glowed in the dim light. "You think she's in love with me?" I lifted my head, meeting his gaze directly, and then I scoffed, letting out another series of laughs, not of joy, but of pure, undiluted mockery. The old man's composure fractured, and a look of genuine, panicked realization flashed across his face, but it was gone in an instant. "He warned me," he stammered, slapping a palm against his forehead and dragging it slowly, dramatically down over his eyes, his nose until it covered his lips. He warned me not to trust you. He said you could do something like this, but I. He let out a frustrated groan, turning towards the quiet officer. That single word was a key turning in a lock. I dragged his attention back, dropping my voice. I let the word hang. Aren't you a bit too old to still be following orders? He flinched, a little with an almost imperceptible twitch, but I saw it. He ignored me, turning back, trying to reclaim his authority. But I wasn't done. I had to press the wound. And since when did a famous Mafia consigliere begin to run to the cops for help? I let my voice drip with feigned curiosity. Isn't that a bit too, I dunno, shady? I rolled my eyes. That one landed. I saw his shoulders tighten and the knuckles on his walking stick turning white. The title, the accusation, it touched a nerve, all right. It scraped against the very foundation of his pride. Sure. Duval's voice was now a cold, calm knife, and there were no signs of all the previous bluster. Sir, the lean officer stepped forward. Please throw him into a cell until he's ready to tell me why he did this. The old man ordered without looking at me. As you wish, sir. Shaw slightly bowed. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have other important things to attend to. Duval straightened his jacket. He walked away, forcing dignity with his echoing footsteps, heading towards the distant glow and muffled music of the large party hall. Shaw gave a slight, almost respectful bow to the retreating figure before his professional mask slid back into place. And just then, Kane reminded me of my place, shoving me forward using a force so violent and sudden that I stumbled, and my cuffed hands only made it impossible to balance properly as the cold metal of the cuffs bit deeper into my wrists. Move it, pretty boy, the big guy grunted, lacing his broody voice with satisfaction. He guided me, not with a hold, but with another sharp push between my shoulder blades toward the large, dark van parked a few meters away. Sorry. I stopped dead, planting my feet. His solid mass collided with my back, the impact jarred my teeth, and I felt the air leave his lungs in a low, irritated grunt. I turned my head as far as I could, forcing the muscles in my neck into a protest. Excuse me, Mr. Shaw. What is it? Shaw, who had been following at a calm, professional distance, paused, fixing his sharp and analytical eyes on me. I need to make a call. I sharply responded. Lawyer won't have any use for you where we're going. It was the big guy who answered, with a hot, foul wave of his breath against my ear. Yeah, right. Thank you for that warning, but it'll only take a minute. I gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of my head, and I kept my eyes locked on Shaw. I took a deliberate step away from the big, annoying fellow, creating a sliver of space. He tensed, but a nearly invisible flick of Shaw's fingers held him back. Now for the performance. I raised my cuffed hands, twisting my torso, trying to force them into the inner pocket of my coat. Of course, it was nothing but a futile, awkward dance. The steel bracelets bit into my wrists, straining the fabric of my coat. No matter how much I contorted, my fingers remained inches from their goal, fumbling uselessly, and a fine sheen of sweat, whether it was real or feigned, prickled on my brow. I let out a frustrated sigh, slumping my shoulders in a show of defeat, and I turned fully to Shaw, with an expression of exasperated helplessness. Officer? My voice was a mix of embarrassment and forced politeness. Please, help me take out the walkie-talkie from my inner pocket. It's just by the upper left side. Thank you. I gestured with my cuffed hands toward my chest. The silence that followed was thick enough to taste, and the violent cop guy let out a derisive snort. Shaw's gaze was nothing short of a physical weight, scanning my face, my posture, and looking for the trap. His eyes narrowed, and he took one slow, measured step forward, then another. Okay, but try anything funny and we'll make sure you won't be able to stand up properly for the rest of your life, he calmly muffled. You have my word. I closed both eyes and dipped my head in a slight, respectful nod. My heart was a silent drum against my ribs, since all he had to do was reach into my pocket. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the distant thrum of the party music and Shaw's measured breathing. His hard and suspicious eyes never left mine, as his hand slid into the inner pocket of my coat. The fabric rustled, he continued to move with deliberate care, and he brought out the dark, single walkie-talkie in his gloved hand. Remember, Mr. Mateo, no funny business. He pointed a single finger towards my nose. "Wouldn't dream of it, officer," I said. He slowly placed the device into my waiting, cuffed hands, making me remember its familiar weight. My thumb found the power switch, and a soft electric click echoed in the tense space as I brought it close to my face, feeling the cold plastic against my lips. The speaker came to life with a soft, fizzy crackle, and beneath it, faint but unmistakable, was the roaring snarl of a high-performance bike engine being pushed to its limit. I let out a calm, low murmur into the device. "Ria," a burst of static. "Ria, are you there?" A moment of nothing but the roaring engine, then her breathless and frayed voice shattered the silence at the edges. "Matteo? Heavens, is that you? She gasped heavily. "Where are you?" I asked, raising the device closer, flicking my gaze up to the two officers. Shaw was a statue of watchful intensity, while the big guy shifted his weight under a physical heat that radiated impatience from him. "It's really you," she breathed with relief in her voice. She's handling her situation far more calmly than I would have guessed, as a silent smirk touched one side of my lips. "That said, this is nothing compared to what we're about to experience, dear Ria," I muttered under my breath, mostly to myself. "Where are you right now?" I asked once more, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm on my way to what was it again? I'm going to the place you asked me to meet you." Her voice hitched under exhaustion. "Right." I blinked slowly, the tiny, folded note I'd left tucked together with the key. "Matteo? Are you still there?" She sounds so scared I deliberately let the silence stretch for a beat since I could feel Shaw's stare hardening. He rolled a thick finger in the air, giving me a universal "wrap it up" gesture, and I gave him a slight, placating nod. Then I dropped my voice into a chilling, conversational calm. "I never asked you to meet me anywhere, Ria." The static crackled. "Sorry, come again?" The confusion in her voice sounded so absolute. My smile widened and Shaw took a half step forward. "That's a joke, right?" Her voice cracked again, this time with a dawning, terrible and intoxicating fear. The silence on the other end of the line became a void, sucking all the hope out of her, and I could almost feel the cold dread seeping through the speaker. "You said to meet you somewhere in Ampang City," she said. "I never asked you to meet me anywhere. If I did, I wouldn't be calling right now." I let the implication hang in the air. There was another pause, and I could picture her frustrated expression. "But you did arrange the gadgets, the bike, and the key, didn't you?" The tension in her voice continued to grow. "That was all me, yes. I gave her that one anchor, only to drag her further out to sea. I heard it then, a hard, dry swallow that was painfully clear over the roar of the engine. So then if you weren't the one who left that note, who did?" Her voice dropped to a horrified whisper. "Ria, that should be the least of your worries right now." A slow, cold smile spread across my face. Finally, she's asking the right question. I know, so where do I meet you?" she rushed, tumbling the words out in a panic. I paused. Let her hang there in the terrifying uncertainty for one more second. My thumb, hidden from the officer's view by the angle of my cuffed hands, found the large, knurled tuning dial on the side of the walkie-talkie. "Come to the—" I rolled the dial hard, and the static, which had been a soft hiss, erupted into a thick, heavy wall of distortion. A deafening crackle of white noise that completely obliterated my words, swallowing the location whole. Before Shaw, the big guy, could react, I twisted the dial to its highest extreme. The device screamed, forcing out a violent metallic screech that tore through the night, making both officers flinch. Then I thumbed the power switch off. The sudden silence was as jarring as the noise had been. With a casual flick of my wrist, I tossed the walkie-talkie away. It sailed through the air and landed with a definitive crunch on the hard cobblestones, shattering the plastic casing while spilling out the internal components. "Bad network these days, right, officers?" I let out a soft sigh, sending a forced smile towards Shaw. He wasn't just watching me anymore. He was dissecting me, and his expression has now turned into a cocktail of pure, unvarnished disgust. "You've got something you want to say, punk?" I raised my brows. The big guy growled, finally stepping forward and clenching his fists. But Shaw held up a hand, still locking his eyes on mine. "I've actually got a lot of things to ask," he said, walked towards me, measuring each step. "But it's not like you'll tell me the truth, or will you?" He grabbed my arm and pulled me firmly towards the gaping maw of a dark sedan van. So never mind. He leaned in close, dropping his voice to a whisper meant only for me, and a faint, knowing smile touched his lips. It's been nothing but a tomb on wheels inside the van, and for half an hour the only sounds were the low hum of the engine and the rhythmic crunch of tyres on gravel. Shaw sat across from me with an ever-relaxed posture, but his eyes never left mine, observing every single movement I made without saying a word. The city lights had long faded in the rear view, replaced by the deep, consuming black of the outskirts, and we finally slowed, turning into a neighborhood that was less a community and more a collection of shadows. We stopped, not at a precinct, not at a holding facility, but before a hulking silhouette that blotted out the sky, an old, battered building with broken windows. It definitely looked like an abandoned warehouse. It is an abandoned warehouse. Shaw's calm voice cut through the silence. He was still holding my right arm, with a firm grip that wasn't the least brutal, as we stood before a wide, rust-streaked garage door. "Aren't you supposed to be cops?" I asked, and turned my gaze sideways, studying his profile in the dim light. Without a word, he let out a soft, airy smirk, and a chill that had nothing to do with the night air traced a path down my spine. "What's that supposed to mean?" I lowered my voice, raising a brow. "You said it yourself, Mr. Mateo." He finally turned to look at me, widening his smile just enough to be cruel. Why would a consigliere run to the cops for help when he can take matters into his own hands? He raised both shoulders in an elaborate mock-helpless shrug and let them drop. The pieces, the ones I'd been so arrogantly juggling, suddenly froze in mid-air. I paused. My eyes dropped to the cracked concrete at my feet as my brain, usually a well-oiled machine of prediction and control, scrambled to recalibrate. I blinked, once, twice, trying to force the new reality into focus. Then my eyes went wide as soon as the realization hit me, and my gaze snapped back to his. "Exactly, Mr. Mateo." He cut off my unspoken thoughts. "We're the sire's men. But of course," he added, dipping his tone into a conspiratorial whisper as Kane grunted and began hauling the heavy garage door open with a screech of protesting metal. "We can't be doing Mafia stuff around the estate with the guests around. Not when his image is already hanging at the edge of a cliff with the stunt your mistress pulled." The door clanged open, revealing a yawning mouth of darkness that smelled of dust, oil, and something older, something metallic and faintly coppery. Shaw pulled me deeper into the warehouse's gut, and our footsteps echoed in the cavernous space, bouncing off corrugated metal walls until he stopped us short before a single grim piece of furniture. An iron chair, bolted to the concrete floor and backed against a rust-streaked wall. Empty, dusty shelves surrounded it, and the space was deliberately arranged to form a cage. "Kane," he turned away from me, shifting his focus to the hulking silhouette by the door, snapping his voice. "I don't see the items." He scanned the empty shelves again, whipping his head back towards the big guy. "So his name is Kane," I filed away. Quite fitting for a brute like him. "Where did you put them?" Shaw's voice echoed around the building. "What items?" Kane, who was slowly hauling the heavy garage door down, raised a brow, leaving it half open as he paused. "The items in the briefcase, Kane. The items." Shaw took a deep, shuddering breath. "Oh, that one." Kane raised a single, thick finger, and a slow dawn of understanding broke over his face. "Yes, that one. Where did you put them?" Shaw leaned forward. "But I thought you said you'd bring them with you." Kane responded. I saw the transformation in Shaw in real time as he bit his lower lip so hard I expected to see blood. "What is your problem, you knucklehead?" Shaw hisses, curling hid hands into white-knuckled fists at his sides, and his entire body began vibrating with a suppressed volcanic anger. "The only thing you're good at is exchanging blows. Why, can't you just be reliable for once?" Shaw raised his voice higher. To my genuine surprise, Kane took a half-step back. It was fascinating, watching this mountain of a man shrink under the verbal lashing of his leaner partner. It's funny how the bigger one is mostly scared of the smaller one. "What, bro?" Kane's voice was almost plaintive. "You said you'd bring it yourself. Why get mad at me now?" "Ugh, just keep an eye on him here until I get back." Shaw let out a sound of pure frustration, swinging an arm through the air as he stalked towards the half-open door. And I swear, if you do so much as lay a finger on him while I'm out, I swear." He halted, spinning on his heel to point a rigid, accusing finger at Kane. "Fine, bro, fine," Kane cut him off, raising both hands. "Please, don't take my stuff away from me. I won't do anything, I promise." "You'd better," Shaw muttered, striding out into the night. The van door slammed shut, and the engine roared to life as its sound began to rapidly fade into the distance. Silence descended, deeper and more profound than before. Kane took a deep breath, grabbed the edge of the garage door, and slammed it shut with a final echoing boom that sealed us in complete darkness for a moment before my eyes adjusted to the single bare bulb hanging from a wire. He turned, leaned his broad back against the closed door, and faced me. Slowly, he took out a cigarette from his breast pocket, tapping it against his thumbnail. "Now's my chance," I thought, spreading a slow, calculated smile across my lips. "Hey, big guy." His head didn't rise, but his gaze snapped up from the task of lighting his cigarette, and the flame, a tiny, dancing orange teardrop, hovered just below the unlit tip. But I had his attention, since his eyes, glinting in the sudden light, were flat and suspicious. "Why are the items in the briefcase so important? And why did your big brother seem so upset about it?" I asked. He cleared his throat, forming a rough and gravelly sound. They're just weapons he needs to torture you with, to make you tell him what he wants to hear," he replied, nervously fiddling one hand with the lighter still in his back pocket. He snapped the lighter shut, plunging his lower face back into shadow, curling his hands into massive, rock-like fists at his sides, and the veins continued to bulge under his skin. "Who needs weapons when he's got me? He just doesn't appreciate me at all." He clicked his tongue, lowering his voice, but in the dead space of the warehouse it was still a clear, rumbling mutter. "So the old punk typically thinks I'm working for one of his rival gangs," I thought. A dry, silent scoff echoed in my mind. "But I don't need gangs to bring him down. I'll do it myself if I have to. I'll bring you all down." I let him see me take a deep, weary breath. I furrowed my brows, injecting a dose of strained discomfort into my expression. Then I sent my gaze straight back at him. "Do you mind taking this off me? It's really uncomfortable with the humid space and all." I curled a faint, pained smile and extended my cuffed hands towards him as the metal gleamed dully in the low light. "Why should I listen to you?" he asked finally, bringing the cigarette to his lips, flaring the lighter to life again. His eyes stayed down, fixed on the flame as he touched it to the tip of the cigarette. It caught, and he took a long, deep drag, making the ember glow in the dimness. This was it, the moment to play the only card I had. "Because if you don't—" I deliberately paused, letting the unfinished threat hang in the smoky air between us. I also saw a slight tension seize his shoulders. "I'll take away your stuff," I added. The reaction was instantaneous and more potent than I could have hoped. Whatever that stuff might be, it's this guy's panic button. He froze, and the hand holding the cigarette stopped halfway to his lips. His wide and suddenly uncertain eyes locked onto mine, and with a slow, deliberate movement, he slid the lighter back into his pocket. Then he pulled the freshly lit cigarette from his mouth, holding it pinched between his thick fingers. He pushed himself off the large door with a slow, purposeful force that screamed of contained power, and each step towards me felt majestic and predatory. He halted before me while folding his arms across his barrel chest and glared down at me with a piercing, simple hatred. I slowly rose from the iron chair with the cuffs still dangling from my wrists. I had to raise my head just to meet his gaze, putting me at a distinct disadvantage I couldn't afford. He brought the cigarette to his lips for one last contemptuous drag, then used his thumb to press down on the glowing red ember. There was a faint hiss of burning flesh and tobacco, a smell that was oddly, nauseatingly sweet and disturbing. He didn't even flinch. He just flicked the dead stub away, not even glancing as it landed on a dusty, empty shelf. "No one but my big bro takes away my stuff. No one but my big bro," he growled, under that sound rumbling from deep in his chest, and took one final massive step forward, closing the distance. And in a flash, his left arm, thick as a railway sleeper, shot out. I saw it coming. I could have twisted away, maybe taken the blow on my shoulder, but I didn't. I needed that pain. I needed the proximity. His hand clamped around my neck, and his steel-cabled fingers dug into the sides of my throat, cutting off the air. He squeezed and slightly raised me up, making me scrape my toes for purchase on the floor. I could feel the red throbbing wave and hot pressure building behind my eyes. The blood roared in my ears, and spots danced at the edges of my vision. For that, I'll torture you to death myself before my bro comes back. I don't care about the consequences, small man. I always break anyone who dares to threaten me. He snarled, pouring his breath containing a foul mixed tobacco and rage towards my face. Okay, I thought, as the world was starting to tunnel, but he's exactly where I needed him. I didn't struggle. Instead, I let my body go slack, shifting my expression from panic to something else entirely. A small smile came out of me at first, then widening despite the agony screaming through my oxygen-starved brain, but I watched the confusion flicker across his face. "You think I came here alone?" I rasped, making each word deliberate, and his grip faltered, just a fraction. "The cameras, streaming, live, 3 locations, your face, crystal clear." I wheezed, spreading my grin wider even as darkness crept at the edges of my vision. His fingers loosened slightly, not enough to free me, but enough to see the first crack in his armor. "You kill me, and you won't make it to sunrise. Not from the cops, from them." I continued, hoarding my voice into a steady but calculated whisper, letting that word hang in the air. "The people I work for don't forgive. They don't forget. And they sure as hell don't leave loose ends breathing." I added, watching his eyes, "But if you let me go." I tilted my head as much as his grip allowed, shifting my expression to something almost paternal, almost pitying. "If you're smart, we can make this go away. All of it. The footage, the witnesses, everything." His hand trembled now. "Or you can squeeze, finish it, and spend what's left of your miserable life looking over your shoulder, waiting for the knock that never comes during the day, only in the dead of night, when you think you're finally safe." I whispered, dropping my voice to a razor's edge. I watched the transformation, the way his breathing changed, the way his eyes darted toward the door, the windows, seeing threats that weren't there yet. "So what's it going to be? Do you want to be the tough guy who dies screaming in some basement? Or do you want to be the smart guy who walks away, forgets this ever happened, and gets to see tomorrow?" I asked, slowly steadying my commanding voice despite my position. His hand fell away from my throat and I dropped to my feet, gasping but never breaking eye contact. "Good choice. Now sit. We have things to discuss," I said, straightening my collar with my cuffed hands.